What is inflation and how the residents in the Philippines are suffering because of it? Inflation is a rise in prices, which can be translated as the decline of purchasing power over time. The rate at which purchasing power drops can be reflected in the average price increase of a basket of selected goods and services over some period of time. The rise in prices, which is often expressed as a percentage, means that the unit of currency effectively buys less than it did in prior periods. Inflation can be contrasted with deflation, with, which occurs when prices decline and purchasing power increases. Causes of inflation: an increase in the supply of money is the root of inflation, though this can play out through different mechanisms in the economy. A country's money supply can be increased by the monetary authorities by printing and giving away more money to citizens, legally devaluing or reducing the value of the legal tender currency, loaning new money into existence as reserve account credits through the banking system by purchasing government bonds from banks on the secondary market, the most common method. In all of these cases, the money ends up losing its purchasing power. The mechanisms of how this drives inflation can be classified into three types: demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and built in inflation. Demand pull effect. Demand pull inflation occurs when an increase in the supply of money and credit stimulates the overall demand for goods and services to increase more rapidly than the economy's production capacity. This increases demand and leads to price rises. When people have more money, it leads to positive consumer sentiment. This in turn leads to higher spending, which pulls prices higher. It creates a demand supply gap with higher demand and less flexible supply, which results in higher prices. Cost push effect. Cost push inflation is a result of the increase in prices working through the production process inputs. When additions in the supply of money and credit are channeled into a commodity or other asset markets, costs for all kinds of intermediate goods rise. This is especially evident when there is a negative economic shock to the supply of key commodities. Built-in inflation. Built-in inflation is related to adaptive expectations, or the idea that people expect current inflation rates to continue in the future. As the prices of goods and service rises, people may expect a continuous rise in the future at a similar rate. As such, workers may demand more costs or wages to maintain their standard of living. Their increased wages result in a higher cost of goods and services, and this wage price spiral continues as one factor induces the other and vice versa. Buyers of such assets may not be happy with inflation, as they will be required to shell out more money. People who hold assets valued in their home currency, such as cash or bonds, may not like inflation, as it erodes the real value of their holdings. In other terms, the poor and the middle income earners will suffer. Philippines, as of March 7, 2023, as the inflation rate eases in February 2023, the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, stressed the need to recalibrate government strategies to alleviate the impact of higher commodity prices. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, reported today that the country's headline inflation rate marginally slowed down to 8.6% in February 2023 from 8.7% in January 2023, as price increases of certain food commodities and energy eased. However, energy and food inflation remained the top contributors to inflation, accounting for 1.0 and 0.9 percentage points PPT, respectively. This was followed by restaurant services, contributing 0.8 PPT, and house rentals with 0.7 PPT. Meanwhile, public transport contributed 0.6 PPT. We must rethink our strategies to combat rising food prices. The country's current high inflation is largely driven by domestic supply-side constraints. Agricultural imports were ill-timed and food supplies have been inadequate. The solution is to get to the root of the problem, including fixing the bottlenecks along all segments of the agricultural value chain, said NEDA Secretary Arsenio M. Balisacan. We recommend the urgent creation of a high-level interagency committee to advise the President and the Cabinet on measures to keep food prices stable and ensure food security for all Filipinos, especially the poor, whose expenditures are largely constituted by food. We must immediately address this issue if we are to remain on track to meeting our poverty reduction targets for the medium term, he added. The country's chief economist also underscored the importance of targeted social protection programs in helping the nation's poorest families and vulnerable sectors cope with the impact of inflation. The government continues to implement calibrated and swift measures to arrest inflation and its impact, including addressing supply issues, especially in food products, providing targeted cash transfers and social protection programs to the most vulnerable sectors of the society, and ensuring access to affordable and reliable energy sources, Balisacan said. These short-term assistance programs will be complemented by productivity and efficiency enhancing measures in the medium term, as outlined in the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, Balisacan added.